Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. We're going to talk about Smackdown from November 15th, 2024. If I remember correctly, this will be a double taped episode of Smackdown. There was a taped episode of Smackdown after this. I don't see much about it online, so maybe I'm wrong. But I thought that both Raw and Smackdown would be taped this week after the original live airing. But this episode of SmackDown was actually an interesting treat because something actually happened. A couple of things happened, and that doesn't go on a lot on a WWE by Triple H. There's sometimes weeks and weeks of nothing happen before you finally have that 1 week in the entire month where a bunch of stuff happens, and it seems like this is going to be that week. So there's quite a few things. Let's get it started with the Triple Threat Tournament, the United States Championship Tournament for the girls, or the Women's United States Championship if you don't want to be disrespectful and call them girls. There's 4 Triple Threat matches that will then become Triple Threat matches from what it looks like. No, 2 singles matches. And that will become, the finals will also be a singles match. I don't understand why Triple H must do this. But it seems like every woman on the SmackDown roster is involved, which is good. Clearly, you could poke out the people who are just in it to take a pinfall. But it is what it is. And it's unfortunate that you see certain names like Elektra Lopez and like, okay, she's never on TV. So clearly she's just going to be there to take a pin. It's also very weird that Naomi was put in this tournament because she had a championship match against Nia Jax this same night. So it was basically just assumed that Naomi would not win. So it would have been smarter, I think, to put somebody else in that spot and then write them out and put Naomi in it. But okay, they just assumed that Naomi's going to be a double champion. Okay, well then why isn't Nia Jax in this thing? So they just assumed that she was going to lose. So the finals will take place on Saturday night's main event, December 14th. That's a good spot for the main event match, I have to say. Should help boost that. You actually get to do something for the first time ever. Let's go through the matches. On the right side, we got Jade Cargill, Michin, and Piper Niven. I fully expect that it will more likely be Michin's going to win this match. Jade Cargill already has a championship, and this booking is booked around so that she won't lose. And Triple H has been doing a pretty good job of making sure Jade does not look overexposed as a singles act and that she hasn't been taking unnecessary losses. So I could see there being some kind of outside influence, especially since Jade Cargill is a tag team champion, from, somebody in the tag team championship midst who cost her this match. I fully expect somebody like Michin to win. I just don't see the benefit in Piper Niven. She's never really featured. And she's closer to Bertha Faye than Bull Nakano. So I would definitely think Piper Niven is just in this match to take the pin. On the lower right-hand side, you got Naomi, Tiffany Stratton, Elektra Lopez. Now, this is a toss-up because Tiffany Stratton could easily win this match. But she has the Money in the Bank briefcase, so she doesn't really need to win this match. Elektra Lopez is not going to win because Triple H doesn't believe in, surprises and things like this. She's just in this match to take the pin. So I would imagine Naomi is actually going to win. So that's kind of my guess. On the left-hand side, we have on the left bottom, we got Bianca Belair, Chelsea Green, Blair Davenport. Blair Davenport should win this match. I fully expect that Chelsea Green will be the one that wins it. But Blair Davenport should win this match. Triple H is a little bit more comfortable with pinning Bianca. So it's likely that Bianca could win and then would just lose in the next round. But Chelsea Green is one of the people that I think is a front runner for this title, even though I think it probably fits somebody like Blair Davenport more. Chelsea Green is incredibly over. She's got a lot of personality. She could really do wonders with a title. So I'm going to think that Chelsea Green is going to go forward. And tonight's match was Bayley, Candice LeRae, and B-Fab. So one of the things that actually did occur on this show is we got to see what B-Fab can do. Brianna Brandy, aka B-Fab, I have not seen her wrestle a match since her very, very awful match with Elektra Lopez on NXT, which had to be about 2 or 3 years ago at this point. It was one of the worst matches in NXT history, and she had very little experience when she engaged in that match. She's gotten more experience since then, so clearly it was about showing what she can do. In a triple threat, it was limited, so she didn't look too bad. Of course, I would have liked to see more of what she could do, but, it is what it is. B-Fab is interesting because she has a lot of charisma. She's got a lot of personality. She can talk. Even though it is kind of stereotypical black girl speak with the hand claps and all that, long fingernails, hand claps, and hair like Felicia from Friday, it fits what she's going for, It's just, I guess, weird that, Bianca has the same affectations and, Jade Cargill has the same affectations and, Jada Parker has the same it's the same thing as all the others. But so she has charisma, she has confidence. It's all about whether she has the ability. And here we didn't get to see a lot, but we did get to see something. For most of the match, she really didn't do much. She just took bumps and got knocked around. And she did one powerbomb spot, the powerbomb spot they do in every triple threat match where they grab them off the top rope. And then she did some kind of twisting slam thing on Candice LeRae. I would have liked for this to be a singles tournament so that we could see more of what she can do as a solo. But she was just in this match to lose, and she did. She lost via roll-up to Bayley because heavens to Betsy. And this is why, look, again, I like Bayley. But this is a tournament to crown a first ever champion. It's an opportunity for somebody to do something different that's never been done before. Why is Bayley being pushed? Bayley is, I don't know. I mean, if at this point, Candice LeRae would have been a more interesting person to put over, because at the very least, it would define what kind of title this is, which would have been a solid mid-card belt. And somebody solidly mid-card like Candice LeRae should probably have it. So the Candice LeRaes, the Blair Davenports, the Michins, these are the people who probably are going to be in the lineage of this title going forward. It's not likely going to be the belt of Bianca Belair or Jade Cargill. Now, it might be, depending on how Triple H decides to carry the belt going forward. But it's also a situation where you might look at it from the perspective of, okay, maybe it's going to be like the World Heavyweight title, where he put the belt on Seth Rollins so that he could be the standard bearer. Well, if that's going to be the case, then it's either going to be Bianca or Bayley is going to be the first champion, or Naomi. Now, Naomi is a good choice because she's a former world champion that they're never going to put the belt on again, apparently. So her winning the tournament would probably satisfy her fan base who wants to see her do something. And she was one of the first women's tag team champions. So it would, wait a minute. No, she wasn't. She was one of the tag team champions with Sasha Banks, but that was later. It was actually Bayley who was actually one of the first women's tag team champions. Because with what they call the old Boston Hug. I think they were the second tag team champions after the Iconics. Or do I have that backwards? I think I got it backwards. I think the Boston Hug won it first, and then the Iconics won it later. So, yeah, I looked it up real quick. It was Bayley and Sasha Banks. They were the first women's tag team champions, and the Iconics was after them. So, Bayley's already been in this position before as the first ever yada yada. So, it would probably be better for it to be Naomi for her fan base and all this stuff. But I cringe at the idea of more titles being introduced. People have discussed that this championship is going to float between brands. I don't see it. There's no Raw individuals in this tournament at all. It's only SmackDown, so I would imagine it's probably going to be a women's Intercontinental title eventually. And they're not going to do them at the same time. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't introduce the women's Intercontinental title until the Netflix deal occurs. And at that point, I believe both Raw and SmackDown will go to 3 hours. I think I was told this, right? That Raw and SmackDown will both be 3 hours. And they're going to need to fill time. So they're likely going to do the women's Intercontinental title thing at that point. So it's going to be rough sitting through 3 hour shows again. It was tough getting through this episode of SmackDown, brother. So this tournament is all about how Triple H chooses to book the women. You know, he loves Bayley, so she gets to go over, even though it doesn't make sense. She can be in it, but she shouldn't be winning it. Jade Cargill and Bianca, they don't really need it. You know, they're going to be the tag team champions going forward. So you could pretty much put an X through both of them. There might be some outside chance that Bianca or Jade will win, but not likely. So I'm going to guess the end of the tournament. I'm just going to guess it's either going to be Naomi or Michin. I would imagine it's going to be Naomi because she has the bigger fan base. And it seems like Naomi is in the LA Knight tier of you're over, but you're not exactly what I'm looking for. You're a little older. So we're going to put you here where you have a championship. You're the leader of your own division, but we're not putting you at the very top of the overall division. Later on, Chelsea Green called B-Fab B-Flop, which was hilarious, and talked about how her and Piper Niven are going to be the champion. Well, of course, this led to only one of you can be champion, blah, 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 blah. And they're on opposite sides of the bracket, so it's not like they're going to fight each other anytime soon. But Michin had her back, so the Michin Chelsea Green thing is not over yet. B-Fab also put out a promo saying that she's not going to be the first women's champion, the first women's United States champion, but she's going to be the women's United States champion eventually. And I'm glad she has so much confidence, because I don't have any confidence that she'll probably not wrestle on this show again for the foreseeable future. I mean, if she's been putting in the work, and, you know, credit to Triple H, you know, by taking Maxine Dupree and B-Fab and kind of forcing the issue that they learn how to do stuff in the ring. And even though they're very bad, he's giving them the opportunity to get better, you know, to improve. And not forcing them onto TV to improve. But I would have preferred if he'd just do more with them as managers. Same thing with Elektra Lopez. Just do more with them as managers. Not everybody is meant to wrestle. It's not for everybody. B-Fab has improved since her last time I've seen her. The last time I remember seeing her anyway. I'm pretty sure she had some kind of match between 2021 and today. But if she's not up to snuff, let's say Elektra Lopez stinks up the joint continuously, I would say she's a great manager. Just let the managers manage. That would be my position. You know, it's okay to put them in a situation where they take bumps, you know, because they were doing some outside interfering, or they get knocked off the ring apron or something like that. Otherwise, not everybody that's on the show is meant to wrestle. You know, let's move on, because I spent way too much time on this women's championship. I think I probably downplayed it a lot last week, and I'm making up for it now. Cody Rhodes, he wants to fight Kevin Owens, but Nick Aldis doesn't want him. Kevin Owens says that this is all very unfair. He's just doing his job. Cody Rhodes told this very melodramatic story of, you know, his relationship with Randy Orton, having to call Randy's family after the pile driver, and that banning Kevin Owens from television isn't enough because this is a man who drives a Lamborghini. Money isn't his motivation. He's morally indignant. And Nick Aldis claims that this is all has to be handled internally first. And apparently they solved it internally very quickly, because Kevin Owens will be in Salt Lake City next week. He cut a promo from inside of his car, but it wasn't from inside of his Lamborghini. It was like a minivan. Uh, uh, Kevin Owens should just lay up against the Lamborghini and cut his promo. That would be nice. You could say, look, he may dress like a bum, walk around in basketball shorts, 25/7. But and I didn't botch it. I meant 25/7. I mean, he probably wears those basketball shorts on Mars, where there's more hours in a day than 24. At least I don't think so. It might be less hours in a day on Mars. But he's wearing basketball shorts all the time, so he's putting his money somewhere, and he's buying sports cars, which kind of rules, actually. That the guy can go around and buy a Lamborghini. You're feeling bad for the wrestlers still? Oh, those poor wrestlers, they don't make no money. This motherfucker, this bum, this sawed off. Never mind. I'm not gonna go into my visceral dislike of Kevin Owens at this point. But if they wanted to do something interesting with his character, they would just, hey, how about you integrate this Lamborghini into your story? Of course, you would have to integrate while Randy Orton was there looking into the Lamborghini, but you can always say it's old footage. Whenever people say like, oh, they're busting kayfabe, I'll just say, oh, it was old. It was back from when they were friends. You just not just seeing it. So, anyway, where was I at? Oh, Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes tells this melodramatic story about calling Randy Orton's family and Randy calling him Code Man. And even though he hates the nickname Code Man, Randy Orton is his friend, is his mentor, and he'll put up with it for Randy. And he says that he needs to handle his business in the ring. That's what they do there. He said, what do you want me to do? You want me to go to his house? And I'm like, oh, please don't go to his house. It would be nice if he did go to Kevin Owens' house, though, and it was like a castle with like armed guards and shit, and you had to knock on the door, like the big door knocker, like in an old wooden castle. You got knock, knock, knock. And then some busty maiden opened the door, like, for whom have you come to see? You would realize that this old balding gray fuck, he spends money on something, but it ain't on wrestling gear. It's on his massive castle and his Lamborghinis. That would be very nice. It'd be an interesting, almost Raven-like thing. Remember when Raven, they did that in WCW with Raven, where he showed up in ripped jeans every week and dingy t-shirts. And then they did an expose where he has like a family pool and he's like 100 millionaire and all this kind of stuff, and he's still miserable. I don't think Kevin Owens could get away with that, but it would be fun if they did do that. So anyway, they're going to have face-to-face next week between Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. This is likely going to be... I read somewhere this is the championship match for Saturday night's main event. But Survivor Series is before Saturday night's main event. And with the pile driver angle, it looks like they're going to write Randy Orton off TV for a little while. Which obviously that's what they were going to do. That's why they did the stretcher spot. But is he going to be gone beyond Survivor Series just from a pile driver, and a shitty pile driver at that? You're pushing it. You're really pushing it. I'm going to say it's a good storyline to heat up Cody and Kevin Owens. Cody has maintained and has been consistent that Randy Orton is his mentor, and that he takes Randy Orton and his advice seriously, and his friendship with Randy Orton seriously. Randy, of course, is Randy, and he's been eyeing that title the entire time, which is very interesting. The problem that we have here is I don't want to see Kevin Owens. And so they've already wrestled, and Cody Rhodes won. So I would imagine that if they wrestle at Survivor Series, Cody is just going to win again. Unless, and there is an off chance, that Triple H does indeed love Kevin Owens enough that he will put the belt on him. It's clear to me that Kevin Owens is being set up for a longer term feud with Randy Orton. And we're going to write Randy off TV until that feud is ready. Perhaps what they do, and this is hope on my side, is that they have Randy interfere in the match, RKO Kevin Owens, and cost him the title. And then they can feud going forward. And then Cody could just go and do something. I don't know what he's going to do. It's also pretty clear to me that they're keeping Cody and Randy apart, because the plan is probably going to be Randy and Cody at WrestleMania. Otherwise, they would probably have been leaning into it a little bit more. I mean, anybody who thinks that Cody's going to be wrestling one of them Samoans, you can forget it. It's just not going to happen. So I would imagine they're earmarking Cody and Randy for WrestleMania. And the good way to do that would be to save Randy the bumps and the time now, so that he can do more of that in the build-up and leading to the big match. But there's still months and months and months between now and WrestleMania. It's at least 6 months. So, and the Royal Rumble is in February. So I think they're going to have another Saturday night's main event in between these two shows. I think I read that online somewhere. I don't remember where, though, so I could be wrong. But I believe there's going to be 2 Saturday night's main event shows. There's going to be one in December and then one in January. And the one in January is going to be shortly before the Royal Rumble. So I'm not really sure how they're going to do that, but it's good that they're doing it, because they need to have some kind of big show in December and in January, and they're going to use Saturday night's main event as a placeholder for pay-per-views. So that's fine. It's all about the mix-up here, because clearly they've had these 3 guys in the mix of each other, Cody, Randy, and Kevin. And it's a Young Bucks elite feud about friendship, the dissolution of all of these different friendships and relationships, because Cody wrestled one time with Roman Reigns. Well, yeah, I think it was only once, maybe a couple of times. So I don't really want to see Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens. I don't really want to see Kevin Owens at all. I would love it if, I saw a clip of Kevin Owens on a French-Canadian television show. He looked like he was a police officer or something. And it looked like he fit. He should have just stayed there. He should have just been like the, what was the name of that bald guy from The Shield? He should have just been that for French-Canadian cop shows. That would have been great. Let's move on though, man. Because I don't really have much more to say, because they're continuing the Kevin Owens Cody Rhodes feud, even though Cody won the match clean. I mean, it is what it is. So the Usos, Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns, they need a 5th person. I don't know why they need a 5th person. War Games does not have to be 5-on-5. You could do 4-on-4. The match could be significantly shorter if you did 4-on-4, but they want to do 5-on-5. Sami Zayn asked LA Knight, which is extremely random, and of course LA Knight wasn't interested. They have to report to Roman, they being Sami Zayn and the Usos, that they can't find a 5th man. Then Solo's music plays. Solo comes out, and they are immediately followed by Roman and his bloodline, and there's a big brawl. This big brawl is then interrupted by Bronson Reed, who attacks Roman Reigns, and after Roman has a face-off with Jacob Fatu, and then Bronson Reed and the Bloodline 2.0, they destroy Roman Reigns in the original Bloodline, or as I'm going to call it, Bloodline DEI. So you have this is a very look. There was some spoilers that Seth Rollins and Bronson Reed are going to be involved in this War Games match, despite Seth Rollins saying he will never team with Roman Reigns again. Now they're going to put Bronson Reed into this match because they need somebody to team with Roman. And Bronson Reed actually does fit with Solo's bloodline. He looks great with them. A team of like Bronson Reed and Jacob Fatu would be monstrous. You know, they would be fantastic together. So I don't really have a problem with the inclusion of Bronson Reed, and he's Polynesian. He's like an Australian Samoan, if I remember correctly. So he's not a member of the family, but he is from the islands. Historically, you know, his family did. His family is, rather. But when it comes to Roman's bloodline, they're going to have an Arab and a white guy in order to make the numbers. So he's going to have diversity, equity, and inclusion bloodline. He's going to have to, I mean, might as well just bring in a one-legged Filipino at this point and put a "We Are the One" shirt on him. I'm not really thrilled about the Seth Rollins inclusion. I don't like it. Namely because I don't think the justification for them working together makes sense. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what happens on Raw. I don't read spoilers. I've never read spoilers. I've never been that kind of guy. If I didn't watch it, I don't care about it. So I don't know what's going to happen on Monday, but I would imagine that the Seth Rollins Bronson Reed thing is going to continue. So it's likely going to be some kind of non-finish, or a finish where Seth Rollins still is going to have something to bitch about. And they're going to keep this thing going. And Seth's going to join this match, not for Roman, but to fight Bronson Reed in a cage, which you could just do in a singles match. You don't need to do this. Despite all of this, they still apparently keep signing Samoans, because now Lance Anoa'i is being sent to NXT. And there's been several weeks of Hikuleo has been supposedly signed. And I'm not saying that we should bring those guys in to do War Games. I'm just saying, you know, we keep bringing these folks in at this point, and apparently there's no real usage for them outside of we're just going to either put them on the roster and do nothing, or what? I mean, what are we signing all these guys for if we're not going to use them, right? And use them in the storyline they were brought in for. Really, what else did you bring Hikuleo in for? You know, you signed him for what? To do what? You know, it's not like he had some kind of great track record and he was some kind of one of the best wrestlers in the world or something like that. You brought him in because he was the brother of the other guys that you brought in. You know, Lance Anoa'i's being brought in because he is the cousin of the guys that you already have on the roster. So you brought these guys in almost specifically for the Bloodline story. And now you're not going to, you know, at least introduce them into the story. But there's only so much of that you can do. I mean, we've been introducing new characters into the Bloodline story for 2 or 3 years now. You can't keep introducing new characters. Eventually you have to end the arc. And I know a lot of people have been saying that the Bloodline story has jumped the shark. They're kind of tired of it. They're now undoing everything that they did before, which is kind of how stories work. I know people don't think that way, but that's how stories work. You engage in a conflict, and then you resolve the conflict. And then the characters have internal and external conflicts that you resolve throughout the story. So the idea that, you know, Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, or Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn, or Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, they're all going to make amends eventually. It's like, yeah, you know, because this is a soap opera. Almost all of these characters are eventually going to find their way back to each other in some capacity, you know, especially since these guys work together and they've been characters around forever. These things are part of their history, but eventually you got to get over it, you know? So it's all about how well do you do it, which is not always done the appropriate way in pro wrestling. Like when they had Triple H make fun of Kane for having sex with a corpse. And Triple H apologized, but it was kind of a mocking apology. Because those guys had been around for so goddamn long that it was still in the air. Like, how could they be friends after this? You know, you said I had sex with a corpse. How can we be partners or buddies after this? So, it's this kind of issue where they're trying to engage in all the internal strife that Roman Reigns was involved with. and trying to resolve some of it. But they're not doing it in the way that makes sense to somebody like me, which is Roman is not apologizing to anybody. He's not humbling himself. He's going through the Usos. Like, Sami Zayn is the one who approached Seth Rollins to team with Roman Reigns, not Roman Reigns. You know, Roman Reigns not humbling himself and saying, look, man, I know we went through all this shit, but ultimately there is something between us. You know, we started this thing together, you know, blah, 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 whatever. That would show a lot of character growth, but they're denying Roman a lot of character growth. At the end of the show, after Roman got beat up by the new Bloodline, he tried to call the wise man and found out that the phone was not in service. And he was very disappointed, and so was the fans. The fans was incredibly disappointed that the wise man's phone is not in service. But fear not, because the internet sleuths, the people who are paying very, very close attention to the Bloodline story, they have told us that Paul's phone got broken, which is true. Paul's phone did get broken 6 months ago. Solo broke Paul's phone. So they're like, oh, that's why the phone doesn't work. Like, it doesn't take 6 months for you to get a new phone. You know, like, it doesn't take that long. Do you think he doesn't have a new phone by now? You think he's stopped paying a bill? Everybody saw the phone break. They'd have sent him a burner by now. He'd probably have his whole new phone by now. But that's the storyline we're going with, is that Solo busted the phone. So Roman's going to have to find another way to contact Paul Heyman. Or whatever he's going to have Paul Heyman do, he's going to have to do it himself. So they're going to drag out Paul's introduction into this thing, which is fine. Paul is a useful piece of business for the Bloodline. He was a big part of it. You know, he added a lot to the story. But I'm not sure how we're going to get Seth Rollins in this thing. Or they might just do the ever defiant, I'm not doing this for you, I'm doing this for me. And he's still going to do it. Still going to fight on the same side as Roman Reigns, even though he said he wasn't going to. I would have preferred for them to just stick 4-on-4. I don't think we need to do the 5-on-5. I don't think that was necessary. I think that if you just saved Seth Rollins versus Bronson Reed, or you'd have just did something else with these guys. But I don't think that the Bloodline story needs more characters. They don't need more people popping in and popping out of the story. It works for Roman's character arc in terms of his redemption story, that he's going to have to make amends with Jay. He's going to have to make amends with Sammy. He's going to have to make amends with Seth. But all this stuff is happening too fast. It doesn't involve Roman actually apologizing to anybody. It doesn't actually involve Roman doing anything. It was Jimmy who came back on his own. And then it was Jimmy who went to Jay. It was Jay who went to Sammy. And it was Sammy who went to Seth. None of these people had any real conversations with Roman. And they're all siding with Roman, which makes no sense. This is Roman's individual beefs with every single person. That's what the first 4 years of this thing was all about. Was Roman getting into it with Jay, then Jimmy, then Sammy, then Seth, and all these other people, you know? And then these people, you know, fighting against him for weeks and weeks and months or whatever. And then, of course, Sami Zayn teaming up with him. And the ever evolving relationship between Jay and Roman. But it's actually hurt Jay, I think, the most to go back to this thing, because he was super over by himself. He didn't really need to be in the Bloodline story anymore. And now he looks nothing like Jimmy. You can tell them apart now, but it's a situation where he's just another guy in We the One shirt. You know, he doesn't stand out anymore. But it also plays into the oneness of the Usos, which is what they wanted. As that's why they lost at Crown Jewel, is because, you know, Jay was doing his own thing and wasn't really fitted in with the rest of the group. But they also lost because of the situation between Jay and Roman, that they never really worked that out. And they're still not working these things out. You know, instead of doing these generic brawls every week, they should be working out the emotional element of why these guys are working with Roman. And I know that doesn't sound like it makes sense for somebody who's supposed to be a fan of action and not drama, but you created the drama, you have to continue the drama. You can't just now say, well, it doesn't matter anymore. We're just going to throw all these people back together. No. And of course you got The Rock, who's there in terms of he's always floating around. When is his next appearance going to be? I think he's more than likely going to appear after the War Games match, so that his part of the story can continue a little bit. Him being a wild card is interesting, because I heard his movie is not doing well. I heard that this whatever Christmas movie, Christmas action flick that he decided to do, he has such terrible instincts as an actor, by the way. You know, why would you take a movie like Red One? What about that movie you thought people was going to go and see it? I don't even know what the movie is about. You know, like, I think The Rock is just used to people liking his movies, but it doesn't work that way forever. And he has far more interest in wrestling than he does in Hollywood. So once that movie flops, The Rock is going to show back up. He might go on a generational one. He might actually want the title at that point to shove it down people's throat that he's a huge star, you know. Or Red One does great, which it doesn't look like it's going to. And we don't see The Rock again until March. But I'm pretty sure, because Red One is not looking very good, he's going to want to be on TV, at least to promote it. He may use that time to promote the movie. He may say, God damn it, go see this movie. I wouldn't be surprised if The Rock doesn't show up at Survivor Series. And then his first promo is going to be in the middle of the ring, and he's going to mention that movie. I can almost guess that's what's going to happen, because the movie looked like it's going to end up being a huge flop. But once that movie flops, The Rock will find his way back into this storyline where he fits. And then he's going to take over from this point forward, because, you know, Triple H ain't going to have anything to do with The Rock is doing. It's going to be The Rock and his troll, his dwarf, his manservant, Brian Gerwitz. And they're going to take over the story from that point forward. I can't tell you if that's going to be better or worse at this point. I can't tell you if that's going to be better or worse. All right. So, Bronson Reed is in the Bloodline story. He's getting the rub. It works for him. I'm not quite sure that Seth Rollins thinks is going to work for me, but I want to see how they're going to execute it. I'm going to shit on it for now, but I do want to see how they will execute it later on. The Tag Team Championship, the Motor City Machine Guns and the Street Profits, the match was thrown out because Tommaso Ciampa attacked the Street Profits. Tommaso Ciampa basically has turned heel. He's very frustrated about not being a tag team champion. He's very angry. He's beating people up. Johnny Gargano tried to make peace with the Motor City Machine Guns and the Street Profits, saying, "Hey, and he's trying to talk to Ciampa like, hey, we didn't talk about this. What's going on here?" And Ciampa shoved Johnny Gargano, and then says he wants the championships. Forget that they didn't talk about this. He wants the titles. And so the Motor City Machine Guns, they're like, oh, well, that was weird. That sucked. And they go over to the Street Profits, and the Street Profits then smack the Motor City Machine Guns. Well, one of them, I think Dawkins, may have smacked one of the guys from the Motor City Machine Guns. And so it seems like both Ciampa is going to turn heel, and the Street Profits are going to turn heel. That's a lot. That's a lot. Now, the Street Profits are extra motivated. Clearly, they haven't been the tag team champions in years. They finally get an opportunity. It looks like they were going to win, and then this happens. Ciampa is very frustrated because they were the champions. They got, gypped out of the titles by the Bloodline. They haven't really gotten a rematch and hadn't gotten an opportunity to... Well, they have gotten a rematch, I think. But they haven't really gotten the belts back. So there's a lot going on here. This is probably the most intrigue the tag team championship has had in a long time, if we're being honest. And that's fine. I'm fine with that. My issue is I don't really care about Motor City Machine Guns, and I don't really care about DIY. I like the Street Profits, but it looks to me like these guys are on their last legs, one way or the other. You know, people have been saying that, oh, Tez could possibly leave. It's like, leave and go where? Go to AEW? Oh, please. Oh, please. Oh. This is the sad part. AEW is on such a downslope that I don't see how the Street Profits or whatever their team name would be would really help AEW, or how AEW would help them. If they're frustrated about their position in WWE, just imagine how terrible their position would be in AEW. I mean, they're better than Private Party, but that doesn't mean Tony Khan will think that they're better than Private Party. You know, that doesn't mean a damn thing. Or they can just end up being with Lashley and MVP again, you know, which would be fine. It would be a great rub, I guess. But, and that's a super stable. I love that idea. The five of them. But I don't know if I see that being money, you know, long term for the Street Profits. It'd be a great spot for them, though. It'd be an elevation of what they've been doing for the last 2 years, you know. So maybe going to AEW would be for the best if they can get scooped up by MVP and brought into his story. But it would just be like the Bloodline, except for Negroes. It'd be like the Negro Bloodline, you know. We're going to bring in all the Negras. So I don't know, man. But I understand why Tez and Dawkins are frustrated. You know, they're getting... It's not just even that they haven't been the champions, that they haven't really been a focus. You know, when they were with Lashley, everything looked like it was going to be great. And then the legs got cut from underneath that, too. MVP made some statements about Triple H where he says that, you know, he wasn't for the new leadership, and the new leadership wasn't for him. And it seemed like it affected everybody who had been somewhat touched by MVP, which would include Lashley, and would include, you know, later the Street Profits. So if there was some kind of falling out between Triple H and MVP, and that led to Omos not being featured on TV, that led to Shelton Benjamin being taken off TV, that led to Lashley being taken off TV, and that led to the Street Profits, you know, diminished appearances as well. That's a political game that you don't really want to play. I mean, it's one thing to say, well, I'm MVP, we're not really going to do your idea, you know, fuck off. That's one thing, but it's like everybody that you've been involved with is now affected. And it's hard to say that it's not the case. That's literally MVP is the one who's been doing most of the talking about Triple H. And we see that it literally has affected everybody that MVP was involved with. You know, literally everybody. Cedric Alexander got sent to NXT. Ricochet is gone from WWE. Remember, Ricochet was a part of that Hurt Business thing, too, for a little while. He was one of the enemies of the Hurt Business, but he was part of it. Apollo Crews was a part of that thing, too, for a short time. He's been diminished. And it's like, how can you look at this thing and not see, you know, how crazy this is, that this happened this way, you know? And some people want to make it a race thing. I don't know if it's a racial thing as much as there's a certain political game that's being played. Much like when a bunch of NXT talent started to disappear when Vince took over. It was like, oh, it was all a coincidence that all these NXT... Like, no, Vince went in there and cleaned house. You know, he fired William Regal and Samoa Joe and a bunch of other people he had no business firing just out of spite. You know, like there's people who are incredibly talented and good at their job that lost their job because Vince was pissed at Triple H. Same thing here. There's some incredibly talented people who are being affected. I mean, Omos is not so much, but guys like Apollo Crews, guys like the Street Profits, who are involved with this situation, or tangentially, not even directly, like they weren't Lashley level of involved, but they're still being affected by MVP's aura, I guess you could say. His run-in with Triple H. And, well, I guess you could say MVP and Lashley. That would probably be the best way to put it, because Lashley had a similar response to why things wasn't working out with Triple H. And that's what's happening here. It's pretty clear that the Street Profits were deeply involved with Lashley, who was deeply involved with MVP, and MVP and Lashley left. So that leads breadcrumbs to perhaps the Street Profits need to leave too. Now, do I think that they'll leave? No, I don't. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do, because of this connection that I see here. And that's that these guys, had something going, and then Triple H fell out with Lashley, and then that was it. And now they're just flopping around. Turning them heel ain't going to really do much of anything if you're not going to change their position. At least when the Street Profits were under Vince, they were front runners. They were like pitch guys, and they always did promos, and they were always there. They were always present. Even if they weren't the champions, they were kind of the premier tag team. And they didn't need to be the champions because they were super over. Now they're not the champions, and then they're barely over. And that's become years and years of doing nothing. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I'm not really huge on the Motor City Machine Guns. I never have been. I just say I like them more than I like the Young Bucks, which isn't to say much of anything at all anyway. But, so there's that. All right. So there was the United States Championship Open Challenge. LA Knight was confronted by Santos Escobar. He said Santos Escobar already beat him. He's done with him. But he was more impressed by Humberto Carrillo, who was staring at him and snarling. So he wanted to give Humberto an opportunity. And you know what? This was probably my favorite part of the show, because we got to see somebody we don't normally see. And I forgot how good Humberto is. I think they just call him Humberto now. I forgot how good this guy is. Remember when they first brought him in, he was fresh-faced. He was as generic a babyface as possible, but Vince was trying to get him over. Vince was featuring Humberto every week on Raw. He's a young guy, good-looking, high flyer, a lot like, Evan Bourne Mexican version. And he grew a goatee, so now he looks more like a man and less like a little boy. And he's great in the ring. Humberto is phenomenal, and so is Angel. You don't see a lot of these guys. And you put them in a singles match, you see how good they really are. Humberto is fucking phenomenal. He's very good. I knew he wasn't going to win this match. I mean, that was pretty much crystal clear. But you see that there is a lot of potential here that for Humberto and Angel and these guys. So now it seems like LA Knight, who obviously won this match, is going to be going back to fighting Legado del Fantasma, which is not a positive, if we have to say that, because these guys haven't been featured on TV in weeks. So they're not really over. They don't win ever. They never win anything. So there's no belief that LA Knight's going to lose. But they had a very good match. They had a fun match that I really enjoyed. After the match, LA Knight is attacked by, and I was just the shadow of Shinsuke Nakamura, the August personage of Shinsuke Nakamura. But Nakamura attacked LA Knight after the match. He looked weird. He had face paint on. You couldn't really see his face that much. He was wearing drab colors, like it was like black and such, and the coat was like really long. He looked like a death. He looked literally like a corpse, like he crawled out of the ground. Very interesting look here. Nakamura is one of those guys that Triple H has not given up on. Nakamura will wrestle in Japan at some point in January. He's going to wrestle for Pro Wrestling Noah. So him introducing a new character before he goes to Japan is weird, because I would think that Japan would want the old Shinsuke Nakamura. They would want the Nakamura that everybody liked from New Japan and everybody liked in the early stages of WWE. I would imagine that's the Nakamura that they want. Now, I'm pretty sure that if he goes to Japan, he's just going to go as that character. But what is he doing here? Hey, what's this? The fact that this was not built up at all is interesting. And now I guess I'm hooked to see where this goes. Nakamura is clearly shot physically and not up to snuff. You know, he's washed, but he is at least somebody different that we haven't seen LA Knight wrestle 100 times already. So that's a positive. I would have, if we're just going to do matches, hell, let's do LA Knight versus Angel too. Let's do that as well. But I guess they're going to make the US title the Open Challenge title again, which is, that's a last known good concept. Like, when the last time the US title actually mattered, and it was when John Cena did the Open Challenges. Even though I think that people like Apollo Crews did good with the US title, I think that people like Lashley did good with the US title. The last really hot storyline was the John Cena Open Challenges, and it seemed like that's really where they're going to go with this. Okay. As long as the opponents are interesting, I'm okay with that, with the Open Challenge concept. I don't know if it needs to be weekly, but I'm okay with the Open Challenges as long as the opponents are interesting. And that's really what made the John Cena Open Challenges work, is that there was an interesting mix of opponents. If you give LA Knight an interesting mix of opponents, he could be a great Open Challenge United States champion. And they started out great with Humberto Carrillo, because I really like that guy, and I think he has incredible amounts of talent. And you get to see what he can do. I don't know if his English has improved. But I think you should be earmarking him for, like, much like an Austin Theory, he should be one of the guys who should be looking at pushing in the future. You know, if you cared about the future at all, guys like Humberto and Angel and Dragon Lee and Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, all the guys who are being treated like jobbers today, would be guys you would move forward with. But does Triple H care about the future? Not really. You know, you brought in Alex Shelley and put him in the top of the tag team division when you got Humberto and Angel right here. It was more important that you bring in Tama Tonga and Tongaloa. I mean, for fuck's sake. It's the same mistake I think Tony Khan makes. Tony Khan has so many incredibly talented guys on his roster. And he just keeps adding more talent. And sometimes he adds talent that are not as good as the guys he already got. But they might have a bigger name. You know, they might have some other role to play. Like, you know, Tama Tonga and Tongaloa within the Bloodline story. So at least that's explainable why you would, you know, bring them in and put them on top immediately. But the Motor City Machine Guns? And people were like, oh, what would the Motor City Machine Guns be under Vince? They wouldn't even be there under Vince. He wouldn't have signed any 40-year-old midgets. For what? You have all these talented guys who haven't had a run yet. I mean, even if they were green and the language thing wasn't really working out 3 or 4 years ago, it's 3 or 4 years ago. They show growth. I don't think these guys are like in their mid-30s yet. If they're 30 at all, they're probably in their early 30s. These are like the perfect time to start really using these dudes as a way of pushing your product, you know, youthful and forward. But they just decided to go with new. And I've had the same problem with Triple H booking over and over again. Is that he seems to be at war with younger people. You know? And look, I'm not saying that all the young guys are great. I just said B-Fab wasn't much. But you still want to see what they can do. And then those who have talent, you still want to find a good place for them on the roster. That's the best thing that you can do. But going to war with your younger talent and basically pissing them off because they're not getting any opportunities at all, unless it's, you know, you figure, Going in there, working 15 minutes and losing is an opportunity, you know, which I guess it is to a degree. But I maybe I'm making too much of this. You know, people probably say, like, there's nothing about Humberto that's, you know, really worth talking about. But for me, I really like the guy. I think that he has, I don't know what his upside is, you know, because we don't really get to see him do anything. It's hard to evaluate a talent if you don't get to see what he can do, you know. But at least in this situation and throughout history, we've seen Humberto wrestle in NXT. We've seen him wrestle on Raw and SmackDown. He's always had good matches, but now he doesn't look like a little kid anymore. He's actually put on a little bit of weight. He's actually gotten himself into shape. He looks good, you know. The same thing we have with Ludwig Kaiser, you know. There's so much potential there that's being shrouded by, you know, Triple H obsession with guys who've been around for a long time or guys who are in their almost 40. You know, Bronson Reed is getting lucky and Damian Priest is getting lucky. These are, you know, guys who are in their late 30s, early 40s. I think Damian Priest is in his 40s already, and Bronson Reed is in his late 30s. That they're getting a new leash on life, you know, because Vince didn't want them around, but well, he didn't want Bronson Reed around. But the young guys in WWE need to have like some kind of revolt, you know, because it's like, holy shit, when are we going to start, you know, getting some motion here? And then you have some of the older guys, even like Santos Escobar. He's 38 or something like that. He's almost 40, you know? And it was just, you can't be 20 years old with, you know, 20 years of experience. So it's not like this guy who had 20 years of experience when he signed at WWE was going to be a young guy. But he has a lot of potential as well that's not really being utilized. And I know you probably got a roster that's too big. You just got too many people. Well, that's why you have NXT. You know, Angel and Humberto really didn't get a chance to do anything in NXT before they were sent back to Raw or SmackDown. I would send them back to NXT. You know, the men's division in NXT could use some help. And you have two great guys here who could probably do a lot with it. You know. And there's plenty of these guys on the main roster that, you know, if you're not going to do anything with them, send them to NXT, you know, even if it's just to do matches and little stuff here and there, they could fill the card and do something interesting and people can see what they can do. I like LA Knight though, so I'm not going to say that Humberto or any of these guys should win. I'm just saying that we're not seeing much of what they can offer. The main event was Bayley. No, I was about to say Bayley, but she was involved with the main event because, of course, she was. Naomi versus Nia Jax. Naomi lost to Nia Jax, obviously, via Samoan drop and Annihilator. The match was better than I expected it to be quite honest. It was a little busy because Bayley and Naomi were happy for each other backstage. Bayley had won her tournament match, and Naomi was about to wrestle for the title. Bianca and Jay showed up. Bianca still doesn't like Bayley. But she said that she's going to have Naomi's back. Naomi, of course, just asked them to watch from the monitors. So Bianca and Jay was watching from the monitors as Naomi fought Nia Jax. They were then attacked by Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez backstage, which opened the door for Tiffany Stratton to run down during the match and cause all kinds of interference and distraction, which led to Nia Jax winning. Typical story there in terms of they're continuing the Liv Morgan Raquel Rodriguez thing with Bianca and Jade. I'm not sure why. They just wrestled for the titles and lost. But you know, that don't mean anything in wrestling. Now you wrestle for the belts and lose and you just get a rematch. You know, hey, what do you mean? But it further tells me that Jade and Bianca likely are not going to win the United States Championship because you have these women floating around, costing them matches here and there. Naomi looked good here. And Nia Jax actually didn't look too bad either. She moved a lot better than she usually does. She took decent bumps for Naomi. It's hard for Nia to move because she's so fucking big. And that's part of that is genetic. She's just a big girl. And she's a little bit older too. I think she's like in her late 30s. So it's she gave as good as she could. You know, Nia Jax is never going to be Bam Bam Bigelow. She's never going to be Vader. She's never going to be Bull Nakano or any other highly talented, heavier person. But she has some value. And they got people into this match. And it would be a lie to say otherwise. Did I really think Naomi was going to win? No. At no point in time did I think Naomi was going to win. But I was also not bored with it. So, that's a positive. All right, so that's SmackDown. The show was better than I expected it to be. That's why the review was so long. And plus, I think I bullshitted last week. I was so tired and frustrated with this fucking show that I felt like I need to, put more of my thoughts out there. Especially since now I have more thoughts than I did before. But it's the same. I have a deep issue with the way Triple H utilizes the older talent. A lot of these guys, we've seen everything that they can do. They're also rams like Kevin Owens. Like, I don't really care about Kevin Owens. You could have your superstar guys who've been around for a long time, who are, stars. Much like, when Roddy Piper was still wrestling in 1996. Okay, we could still have Randy Orton, but we can still have, like, just Jake Snake Roberts was still there in 96, so we can still have some guys that are there that are a little bit older. But for the most part, almost the entire top of every division is an older talent that has been around for a long time. LA Knight's fairly new in terms of he signed in 2020, and he's only been LA Knight for like a year or two. So he can get a pass, and Cody, I guess, is new, fairly new as well. He's only been in WWE 2 years since his return. So I guess you can give both of them a pass. But Bayley, she's never left. So, and the Motor City Machine Guns, of course, they've only been there a month. But I'm not giving them a pass because Triple H had what the fuck did he even bring them in for? It's like, I guess you want to reiterate your tag team division. Like, you got a bunch of young guys you could have built your tag team division on. And you have 40-year-old white midgets already in DIY on your roster. You didn't need to bring in Motor City Machine Guns. And I'm not saying like it's a bad thing either. I'm just saying it like it is. And just telling it like it is. They add something to the division, but I don't know if they should be at the top of it already. Right now, I don't know. So the Bloodline story is still the A story going into the Survivor Series and Saturday Night's Main Event. Cody Rhodes is a solid B plot for SmackDown. He's not being seen much. He's not wrestling on the show at all, which is fine, I guess. And there's been a lot of complaints about that guys like Roman and Cody don't wrestle on the show. So the matches are almost always guys like the Motor City Machine Guns or guys like Naomi. And people are like, well, why can't I watch Jacob Fatu wrestle on this show? And it's like, yeah, why can't we watch Jacob Fatu wrestle on this show? Why can't Jacob Fatu go out there and crush some jabroni in the middle of the ring just to look like a badass? Even if the match is 3 minutes, so what? We got a chance to show him off and see what he can do. Again, see what people can do. People like Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, like every time we see them, they're doing something mid as fuck. So everybody's gonna think that they're mid as shit. They're physically shot and not able to go. But wouldn't it be nice if they got to beat up some jabronis and to look strong instead of constantly fighting the Usos and Roman, and where everything is 50-50 and nobody really gets over? That's part of the problem here is the young guys are forced to wrestle these older talent and they don't really get to look great doing it. Even if they win, they still have to do 50-50 back and forth. They don't really look all that strong. And that's part of the issue is that the strength of a lot of these characters is waning. And only really at the top that you have a lot of strong characters, but the characters are a little too strong. Like, nobody believes that Cody is going to lose to Kevin Owens. Nobody believes it, which might actually be a good swerve if they were actually going to do it. But nobody believes that. It's just another Kevin Owens main event. And yawn when it comes to that. I don't think anybody really believes that the Street Profits would win. I don't think anybody believed that Naomi was going to win. You got to shake things up. Got to be willing to take risks in terms of booking. And I'm not seeing that from Triple H. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you folks later.